The European Union, it's an entity created to destroy the homogeneous civilization of Europe. How it is titled, the European Union, it's very subversive, because at first glance it implies a partnership or an alliance, and it totally is, but not an alliance of sovereign governments who work towards a better future for their people, no. It is in fact the opposite. You see, in the 21st century, the mind of a common Westerner is captivated by government talkheads who speak about economic partnerships, who talk about equality, who talk about creating jobs, who talk about cutting taxes. But in reality, those policies never serve the individual. The average native European I'm talking about. The average European cuckold was conditioned his whole life to believe that he or she must be tolerant, must be welcoming, must be kind to outsiders, to refugees who just flee from their war-torn countries to find a better life. But in reality, those immigrants are government welfare leeches, who more often than not contribute nothing to their hosting countries, having this parasitical relationship to its host while transforming the landscape, the culture, and the customs of their hosting country into a multicultural and multiracial hellhole. To sustain one immigrant is 3 times more expensive than to sustain a native European, because that immigrant needs a house, needs a job, and by the time he will be fully assimilated, he will never pay for those benefits in taxes, no matter how long it stays, or quote-unquote is assimilated. All the leaders of the European Union have received memberships to the World Economic Forum, a non-governmental organization, or an NGO if you like, whom are sponsored by every global mega corporation under the sun, from the real estate giants of BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, who own more than 50% of all the global stock markets and assets under management that are worth almost $20 trillion, to big tech giants such as Apple, Meta, Huawei, and OpenAI, to food monopolies such as Nestle, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, or Kellogg's, to big pharma companies such as Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and AstraZeneca. And finally, but not least, the biggest banks in the world like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, ING Group, Citigroup, Deutsche Bank, Bank of America, and many, many more. In other words, like the immortal quote by George Carlin, it's all a big club, and you ain't in it.
Because they own this fucking place. It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club.
The World Economic Forum is the biggest global NGO in the world, and they are pushing and created 2 indexes for regulating companies, such as the famous ESG rating, which stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance. This index regulates companies to adopt those quote-unquote environmental-friendly policies and gives a little financial support to those companies who do. Those environmental policies have been proven to be ineffective, expensive, and potentially dangerous in the long run for the environment. I will do a future video where I will expose more in depth the false environmentalist agenda who aims in fact to line the pockets of mega corporation while deforesting our very planet, destroying the environment, not to benefit it. The other index is the DEI index, which stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, who aims to level the playing field, so to say, in the workforce. Meaning to hire groups who are quote unquote misrepresented, such as LGBT people and racially underrepresented people. In other words, it's a policy who aims to hire less straight white people and less competent people in favor for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Counterproductive? Absolutely. But this is their plan. And the European Union is the reflection of this very powerful NGO. The European Union was officially formed in 1993, but its roots trace back all the way to the early 50s. The founding father of the European Union is considered by the EU to be Richard Kalergi, an Austrian, quote-unquote Austrian, whose mother was Japanese, and he had an identity crisis since his early childhood. He said, and I quote, "The Eurasian Negroid race of the future will replace the diversity of the peoples of Europe with a diversity of individuals." End quote. I want to bring to light more actors, let's say, the usual suspects, of course, leaders of the European Union. Let's start with Federica Mogherini, High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy and former member of the Italian Communist Youth Federation. Quote, "Islam belongs in Europe's present and future." End quote. Martin Schulz, President of the European Parliament. "For me, the new Germany exists only in order to ensure the existence of the State of Israel and the Jewish people." End quote. Franz Timmermans, Vice President of the European Commission. "There is not going to be, even in the remotest places of this planet, a nation that will not see diversity in its future." End quote. Vyacheslav Moshe Kantor, President of the European Jewish Congress and the European Council on Tolerance and Reconciliation. "We should make it illegal for anyone to hold racist views." End quote. And finally, from our beloved Ursula von der Leyen.
Europe is the values of the Talmud, the Jewish sense of personal responsibility, of justice, and of solidarity.
Europe has the values of the Talmud. Yeah. Yeah, no. And speak for yourself, you ugly hag, okay? You don't speak for us. Yeah, for those who have ears to listen, eyes to see, and brains to understand, the plan is out in the open. Even a blind man can see that. Or smell it. The European Union was made for one purpose and one purpose alone: to eradicate the European race, identity, culture, and heritage, while serving them a false idea of a prosperous financial future, equality, and acceptance. But very few people know that Germany, for example, is in a financial recession for more than 3 years by now, and it shows no signs of recovery. The same for France and many more. The European Union was made to fool the high IQ individuals into believing an economic alliance with all EU member countries will be an economic benefit for the small individual. When in reality, it is a benefit for NGOs and private megacorporations whom already have monopolies on basic utilities, resources, and raw products. Small producers can never compete with giants. Small investors, small family businesses are becoming an artifact of the past. It's not an economic partnership. It's a wealth transfer from your small wallet to the big wallets of politicians and oligarchs. Oh, sure, the European Union is happy to lend irredeemable funds to poor countries like my own Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Estonia, Latvia, or Lithuania. As long as they implement their globalist policies, like accepting millions of immigrants into their own countries or adopting LGBT-friendly laws like legalizing gay and lesbian marriages, or to push for drag queen story hour for children, allowing government-funded LGBT pride parades every June, or protecting minorities, whom already have more benefits and rights than the native people of Europe whom built said countries. Just take a look at Germany. A congresswoman was arrested for showing the crime statistics in the parliament and showing that immigrants commit the most crimes in Europe, while a migrant criminal can stab a person and will go off with just a slap on the wrist. If you don't believe me, or if you don't believe your eyes, or you are just unwilling to recognize this cold hard fact, check out these statistics. While 1 in 10 of Germany's inhabitants were foreigners in 2014, that is still a huge number for my liking, but I digress. This is now the case for 1 in 6 of its inhabitants. Since 2015, Germany has welcomed more than 2.5 million non-European foreigners. This is only in Germany. Suspect rates in crimes and offenses among the main nationalities admitted since 2015 are particularly high. You don't say. That's an understatement. Look, the number of suspects per 1,000 inhabitants, this excluding immigration law offenses, are 113 for North Africans, 79 for Afghans, 63 for Iraqis, and 51 for Syrians. In comparison, only 18 for Germans. Between 2014 and 2023, the number of assaults increased by 16%. 360,000 more foreigners were implicated in assaults in Germany over the past 9 years compared to the 2014 levels. And for those who think that immigrants will be a net positive, because they will do the bottom jobs whom nobody wants to do, and used for cheap labor and jumpstart the economy. Listen to this. In Germany, the unemployment rate for Afghans and Syrians exceeds 30%, while that of Germans is only 5%. You have to realize that you, the native European that is watching this video right now, you are working your ass off to pay for the welfare of immigrants who are assaulting your own people, raping your own women, and grooming your own children, while they are granted more benefits and more rights than you in your own country. How does that make you feel? Do you still support the European Union? The best example is Hungary. When they rejected EU's demands to implement LGBT-friendly laws, they cut any EU funding, contributing to their already dire economical situation and recession. Those EU funds never serve the individual. First of all, they are too small. They are basically table scraps, breadcrumbs, if you like. And the average individual will never see the financial support for, let's say, a startup, for a small family business, because the process is so long, so tedious, so bureaucratic, by the time they grant it, it's too late. And they say, oh, sorry, we're out of funds. Just like I tried to do a few years ago. And corrupt countries like my own, Romania, those European funds always end up in the pockets of the politicians. The plan is put out in the open. It's clear. The purpose of the European Union, it's not to uplift the European people, but to gently genocide them into indulgence, consumerism, fornication, making them less likely to have offsprings, while gaslighting them into subverting them into being weak, tolerant, and obedient. Back in the 1930s, the European race, along with North Americans, who are basically people of European descent, represented 45% of the world's population. Now, it represents less than 9%. How does that make you feel? Those who support the European Union into believing it will usher in a future where they will have more money and prosper are the fools, the same as the fools who shouted almost 100 years ago, "Long live Stalin, long live communism." Gullible middle to high IQ individuals are brainwashed, programmed, conditioned, and guilt-tripped into accepting globalism for a monetary gain that will never come to them. But to the already big corporations at the expense of the very civilization their ancestors built, protected, maintained, fought, bled, and died for thousands of years. Those smart intellectuals are too blind and too infatuated with their own ego to understand or even to comprehend that the European Union is not a coalition for a better future. It is, and it always has been, a communist organization. People don't realize that communism is not the opposite to capitalism. But there are different sides of the same coin. They have the same end goal: to put all the wealth into the hands of a handful of individuals. The banks, the media, the megacorporations, the NGOs, and the puppet politicians whom take the table scraps like the good slaves that they are. In communism is forced collectivization and the murdering dissenting civilians, while in capitalism is financial slavery. The European Union, it's a globalist, oligarchic, neoliberal organization made for one purpose and one purpose alone: to make Europeans slaves into their own countries, to make Europeans beggars into their own countries, while eventually eradicating their race, their culture, their heritage, their own DNA from their own countries. Their birthrights that their ancestors granted them. Are you willing to just sit by, be a consumer, be just a cog in the machine? Be just a pawn A slave for their schemes? Or are you willing to take a stand and join our movement, the New Way movement, a movement made for you, the European or North American who's watching this video right now? We have members from all over USA, Europe, and also Russia. Our movement is to counter this globalist, neoliberal status quo and to take back our countries that we and our ancestors built before us. May God bless Europa and its beautiful people.